Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Garden Party. We're your virtual series from the Southern California News Group, giving you tips, tricks, and insights for getting the most joy and productivity out of your gardening experience, and also help you find a community of like-minded green thumbs, or as I like to say, a wannabe green thumb. I'm Sam Dunn, the senior editor for premium content here at the Southern California News Group. And I want to thank you for being here and thank our Reader Reward subscribers for supporting our virtual programs. And by the way, if you are a Reader Rewards subscriber attending today, you're automatically entered to win a $100 gift certificate to Home Depot, which should come in handy. And if you're not a subscriber, well, why aren't you a subscriber? Please go to scng.com/subscribe and find your local paper and join us as a subscriber. Anyway, before we get started, I've got a few reminders. As an attendee, you're going to be muted here, but if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature on the Zoom toolbar on your screen. And certainly if you want to make comments, use the chat feature found there as well. That's where you can chat with other members of the community. Keep in mind, this is a freewheeling conversation. There's so much information. If you haven't been here before, you're going to be amazed. You're going to have slides to refer to as we go, and the information is going to be emailed to you after the show, so you're not going to miss anything. This session is also videotaped, and a link and the slides that we refer to will be sent to you, so you can share or just revisit some of your favorite moments and certainly refer to them after the fact. It's also posted at scng.com/virtual events, and that's where you can find all of our past virtual shows and see what's coming up next. Anyway, now it is my pleasure, absolutely, to introduce our resident gardening rock star, Joshua Siskin. Joshua is the gardening columnist at the LA Daily News since 1993. He holds a master's degree in horticulture from UC Davis. He's also been a landscaping and gardening practices instructor for the Los Angeles Unified School District and for UCLA Extension. And he owned his own landscape management company. And wait, there's more. He's also a licensed psychotherapist. So as I like to say, that's why he's good at getting to the root of our gardening issues. Anyway, hey, Joshua, how are you today?
Great, Samantha.
Wonderful.
Introduction.
Well,
it's really interesting that you mentioned the psychotherapy aspect. I don't think there's anything that's more beneficial to mental health than planting and sprouting some seeds, taking some cuttings and putting them in water and seeing the roots grow.
Well, that's a great segue. I agree with you, getting your hands dirty that way. And today we're going to be talking about, as you're mentioning already, the most elemental aspect of gardening, and that's the basics of plant propagation. So get us started. Where do we even begin with this?
So I kind of like to begin with a biblical account, where we learn that on the third day of creation, God said, let the earth sprout grass and herbs and fruit trees and so on and so forth. However, letting it sprout forth doesn't mean it had already sprouted. In fact, if we look at the middle slide, at the middle image here, if we go to the second chapter of Genesis, we see, in fact, that all the plants of the field were not yet on the earth, right? And the herbal vegetation had not yet sprouted, for the Lord God had not brought rain upon the earth, and there was yet no man to work the soil. In other words, this whole idea of growing plants or having plants for our benefit depends on us. It's not something that we can just be apathetic about, but we need to take an active interest. And we see on the right, there was a rabbi by the name of Rashi. It's actually an abbreviation for Rabbi Solomon ben Isaac, who lived 1,000 years ago. And his point was that when it says that no rain had been brought upon the earth and there was no yet man to work the soil, that man had to pray for rain before there could be growth of the crops. So there's that aspect of us putting our own spiritual interest, I guess you could say, into the process in order for it to go forward, according to the biblical account.
Well, I love you bringing that perspective. It's lovely.
Yeah. And so now we're getting a little bit, we're going to go from the Bible into the rap idiom, right?
So you did a rap. Okay, let's hear it.
Without plant propagation, there would be no civilization. Growing plants from seed was a radical innovation. It made people learn about delayed gratification. So you see,
Unique content to us, folks. Unique content.
you see, the beauty until people put seeds in the ground, right? If
Yeah.
they saw rice, they took the rice and they cooked it and they ate it. Or if they saw grain, if they saw kernels of wheat, they took them and they pounded them into flour and immediately baked them into bread. So there was this instant gratification. The whole point of planting seeds is that it takes a few months for a crop to grow. And so the whole idea of being able to put off pleasure began with growing plants from seeds. So it's, and I think that might be something that's missing from our lives. The whole concept of patience, of having to wait for something.
Right, because now it's instant gratification, right? We live in a world of instant gratification.
And I truly feel that you're missing out on life if you don't sprout seeds.
I love
Even to the extent that if you could sprout a few seeds every day, your life would be transformed. I'm telling you, when you put seeds in the ground, you're going to be looking every single day to watch their progress.
signs of life. Well, like, get us started. How do we even begin the process?
So, and I also wanted to bring this point in about children. I think it's a great education for children to plant seeds. They gain self-confidence when they see them sprout, responsibility for having to take care of them as they grow, and then also learning to share when they harvest the crops and they give them to their friends. So,
And have a sense of the natural world. So many of our kids
oh
don't.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, continue on.
So now, if we talk about the creation of the world and people having to pray for rain in order to receive the story of Noah, again, it's a biblical story. When Noah got off of the ark, he immediately planted a grape. He immediately planted a grapevine or a shoot from a grapevine, and it grew into a plant. Now, how is that possible? Okay, they had been on the ark for 6 months. How is it possible that they suddenly could take a grapevine and plant it? Where is it coming from? So again, the same commentator, Rashi, says that they took, Rashi, by the way, was a grower of grapes himself. He grew grapes and he made wine. They took cuttings from the grapevines, right, and put them into the ark. And so then, as soon as they got off the ark, they could put them in the ground and they would grow. And just one last point about the Bible. The Bible, they list 7 species that are native to the land of Israel, and 5 of them are fruits. 5 of them are, we're talking about dates, pomegranates, figs, grapes, and olives. And all of these plants can also be grown from cuttings. So it's a very interesting idea that
well, it just underscores that it's an ancient idea, right? And
yeah, exactly. It's an ancient idea. The idea of cloning is nothing revolutionary. It started in the time of Noah, according to the biblical account. Yeah.
Well, for somebody like me who has never propagated a plant, I've just bought them. So where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? So yeah. So before we get into it, like somebody's going to say, well, why should I plant seeds? I can go to the nursery and I can buy a tomato plant. It's already in the pot.
My point exactly.
One of the advantages of growing plants from seeds is that you save a lot of money. Okay, the plant on your right, the tomato plant on your right, costs $2.50 or even more. I've seen them as much as $6. Okay, whereas a packet of seeds is $3, but in that packet of seeds you have around 25 seeds. So obviously, if you do the math, you're going to save a lot of money by planting seeds. And the other issue is when you take a plant from a nursery that's been growing under certain specific conditions and you put in your garden, it's going to have to acclimate. And sometimes it doesn't acclimate too well because it's been very pampered in the nursery. However, if you grow from seed, then the plant is going to be more acclimated because it's going to be used to the garden conditions. Even if you bring it in when it's a small plant that maybe you sprouted in your house and then you brought it out, but it's still going to be little and it's going to acclimate. And again, it's the satisfaction that comes from growing from seed.
Grown
It's
from
you
seeds.
can't duplicate it.
That's beautiful.
So now we come, there are two types of propagation. Propagation from seeds, we call that sexual propagation, because you have a combination of male and female genes. Okay, so each plant from every seed is different. It's like children, you never know what you're going to get. And then we have the asexual, which is cloning, whether you're taking a branch of a fig tree or a grapevine and sticking it in the ground, or what they call, or even the most radical cutting edge technologies is tissue culture cloning, where they take infinitesimal cells from a plant and they put them in a tissue culture, right? And they grow into a complete plant. This is the point. This is a fascinating concept. There's something called totipotency with plants. What that means is any cell from any plant can grow into an entire plant.
That is incredible.
If you take 2 cells from the root of a plant or 2 cells from the leaf of a plant and you put it in the right mixture of ingredients, you can grow an entire plant.
That's
Whether it's a
amazing.
rose, whether it's a peach, anything you want. And that's really that's another miracle. But obviously animals don't have that. The clone that they made out of a sheep came from reproductive cells. But that's the only way you can clone an animal, through the reproductive cells. But you can do it with plants through any cell.
Any cell. This is fascinating. Before we get too far down the road of specific, we already have a question from Jason Chan, who has a question regarding seeds. Are expiration dates valid? Can we use?
Yes, they're very valid.
They're very valid. He asked, can we use them 2 years later? But
let's put it this way. It's almost kind of like meat. If you took those seeds and put them in the freezer, right, you can disregard the expiration date. My wife just bought some brisket with the expiration date, and we said, "Oh, if I freeze it, I can keep it for a long time." So it's the same thing with seeds. And if you collect seeds in your own garden from your own plants and put them in a plastic bag, right, a sealable bag, and put them in the freezer, you can keep them for many years.
Great tip. Yeah. Great. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we come to pre-germination treatments. Some seeds require pre-germination treatments, but all seeds can be treated in a way that they will germinate more quickly. Now on the left, we have peas. Any seeds that are large, like peas or beans or nasturtium, if you're familiar, it's a flower, they should be soaked in water overnight. You can see on the left the pea seeds prior to being soaked, and on the right after. And once they're soaked, in fact, they would eventually sprout roots if you left them in the water, but they're much more ready to germinate. So that's something to keep in mind. Afterwards, you put them on a sunny windowsill, and they're going to be fine for a few days. And then on the right, we have another way of sprouting seeds, which is simply to put them on a wet paper towel into a sealable plastic bag, or a Ziploc bag. Maybe leave the bag open a little bit, put them on a sunny windowsill, and they're going to germinate in a very short time.
So it's like a Ziploc greenhouse.
Right. Just leave it a little bit open, because seeds need 3 things to germinate. They need moisture, they need light, and they need air. So you don't want to seal it all the way.
Suffocate them.
Right.
Great. Next slide, please.
So scarification refers to making a little bit of a nick or an opening in a seed. And we see that in the middle with the pumpkin seeds. If you take a sandpaper and just sand off the edge of the pumpkin seed where it comes down at the bottom, tapers down, and then put it on a wet paper towel, it's going to germinate very quickly in a day or two, right? And then on the right, we have 2 things were done. These are carob seeds. Carobs are native to the Middle East. They can live with drought for years and years. So their seeds are very hard. So there are 2 things you need to do if you want to germinate carob seeds with confidence. Again, the sandpaper treatment, or even taking a pliers or something to open up the seed slightly, and then to soak them in sulfuric acid, and that will open them up. I have on the left just something you may be interested in, because this is a very fashionable thing now, very nutritional to eat sprouts and microgreens.
Yes.
Sprouts are seeds that have been germinated either in usually in soil, but they can also be germinated on wet paper towels. And you eat the entire sprout, of course. Microgreens, you let them grow for a longer period of time, up to 2 weeks, and you just eat the leaves. But both of these are highly nutritious. You can grow them. You don't have to have a garden. You can grow them on your kitchen window sill, or even on anywhere where there's some decent light, and they're very nutritious and
they're delicious, I might add. I use them frequently. I want to get, before we get off this slide, let me just get a point of clarification on the soaking in sulfuric acid. How long do you soak overnight there too? Or
yeah, overnight would be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
and
you.
that's called stratification. Now, stratification, vernalization is another word. Vernalization means getting ready for spring, literally, or getting ready for germination. Stratification means that you stratify the seeds. In other words, you put them and you layer them either in between peat moss or sand or something like that. Because certain seeds require cold in order to germinate. For instance, roses. If you take seeds off your roses and you want to germinate them, they're going to have to undergo a cold treatment. Occasionally, they can sprout without, but to be sure that they're going to sprout, you have to give them a cold treatment. And the same thing with deciduous fruit trees, except for apricots, which are put in cold storage. As soon as they're harvested, I'm talking about those that are commercially grown,
Right.
they go through that process of stratification. So if you buy an apricot and you you have to extract the seed and you put it in the ground, you're going to have an apricot tree in a few years. And it's a tree, by the way, that not all fruit trees are like this, but the apricot is very consistent in the sense that the fruit you get from a tree that you germinated from a seed will be of the same quality as a fruit that it came out.
That's incredible. So
always happens. Yeah.
the apricots I buy at Albertsons can.
Yeah. So you could germinate those seeds if you wanted to, because they've been frozen in a manner that replicates that cold stratification process. And of course, we know this is true for bulbs as well, right?
Right.
There are many bulbs that require it. Tulip and
Great. Well, I know we have a lot of material next.
yeah. And now here also, we're getting into the nitty gritty or something that you can do, tomorrow or for the next few days. If you get some potatoes, right? And everybody knows if you leave the potatoes out in the open, what's going to happen? They're going to start to sprout. So as long as you take 2 sprouts, you can get more than one potato plant growing from a single potato, right? As long as you have 2 sprouts, right, and you cut off a piece of potato, you put it in the ground, you're going to grow a potato plant. So that's something that anybody can do. And then to the right of that, we have sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are a little bit different. You put them in water, you get all these sprouts, they're called slips. You cut off the slip with a little piece of the sweet potato attached, you put it in the ground, you grow sweet potatoes. Okay, very easy to do. Then we come to garlic bulbs. You separate the cloves that are in the bulb, you plant them, and you get new cloves. Now, garlic is a plant, by the way. You can do it without chilling, but you're not going to get the same size bulbs if you chill. So if you do take your garlic cloves, you want to put them in the refrigerator for a couple of months, not the freezer, but you put them in the refrigerator for a couple of months, then put them in the ground, and you're gonna have garlic. Okay?
A couple months.
Yeah. They need a good chill.
Okay.
Now, moving to the right, we have ginger, turmeric, horseradish. You can buy all these things in the nursery, right? In the grocery store.
Grocery store. Sure.
And you plant them, and they grow, and the rhizomes, which is what we eat, right? Those rhizomes are going to expand, and they're also going to produce shoots. Okay, but you're really looking for the rhizome, the increased size, and it's a nice plant to have around. Okay, there is some frost tenderness associated with ginger, so you want to put it in a place that's kind of frost protected, and you can grow it indoors too, as far as that goes, as long as you have sufficient light. And then the bottom left, we're talking about green onions. If you take onions from the supermarket and put them in soil, you're going to grow shallots. You're going to grow onion greens. Okay, and you'll have those handy. And then in the middle, we have carrots, turnips, beets. If you cut off the tops and just put them in a little water, you're going to have a lot of greens, and all those greens are edible. You can put them in your salad. You can put them in your stew, whatever you like. Yeah, yeah.
Great tips.
Last but not least, I don't know if you're familiar with chayote.
No.
It's from Central America. It's become very, very popular. It's one of the easiest plants. You may have to go to a specialty market to find it. But what you do is you put the entire, it's a kind of squash. You put the entire squash or the entire chayote into the soil, and it grows like crazy. It sends out runners all over the place, a lot of fruit. It's a very easy plant to grow and very nutritional.
Magic words for me, easy to grow. I love it.
Now here we have fruit. Everybody's familiar with the avocado on the left. You put the seed either in water or you put it in soil. And the mango in the center produces a single seed, and it's actually quite large. You can see the seed is on the right, and then you have to split open the seed coat in order to get the seed out of it. But a mango is another plant that the fruit often resembles that. The fruit that comes from seeds will resemble that of the fruit that the seeds came out of. So it's a beautiful plant, and it's something you might want to think of growing.
Just to stop there, because I've never talked about growing mango before. Can you grow it like you grow your avocado seed on your windowsill for a while?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And one thing it does is, like citrus, occasionally you get what do they call? You get embryos. You get seeds that have not been fertilized. In other words, they're really are clones of the mother plant. If you see a lot of sprouts coming from a single seed, then you know that those will become trees that will be identical to the mango that you took the seed from. Same thing's true with citrus. Sometimes you plant a seed and you see, we see bottom left, there it is. Polyembryonic citrus seeds. Okay, seedlings are clones of mother plant. So when you see those, you know that if you grow it, you're going to get a clone of the mother plant. Okay, and you see that also in mango. And then on the upper right, papaya. Now papaya have many seeds,
right?
As opposed to these other fruit, but they're easy to propagate. Very easy to propagate in soil. Just don't let them dry out because they're tropical. And then on the bottom, I talked about the apricot and the ease of sprouting them because they've already been gotten the cold treatment after they were picked.
Yeah, you could have fooled me and told me it was an almond, and I would have believed
it.
Yeah,
so this is it. The almond. Okay, so the seed of an apricot is very similar to the seed of an almond. I mean, the almond is a seed after all. And so what you see here, you see the seed coat has been broken and cut away, and inside is the seed of the apricot, which it's identical to an almond in its appearance. But you can't eat it. There's a toxicity associated with apricot seeds. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I didn't.
In fact, there's a drug that I can't remember the name offhand that they were using it as a cancer treatment, but it's not really accepted. But it's highly toxic, so you want to be careful not to eat an apricot seed.
Awesome. Fascinating.
So now we're coming to, by the way, great holiday gift. For $27, you can get this whole kit for the gardener in your life. In other words, you get this. You get the tray with 72 cells for propagation. You get the heating mat underneath, and then you get the globe on top, the covering, right? So the seeds don't dry out. But this is what people that are really into vegetable growing never put the seeds in the ground. Okay. They grow them in something like this. First of all, because it's a lot faster, okay, and you don't have to contend with pests and
birds,
and rodents eating your seeds and things of that nature. It's not going to happen. So you grow up the seeds in these contraptions, right? And the only thing to pay attention to is once the seeds germinate, you want to take them off the heating mat because they could fry. But it's a really great way to. You gain a lot of confidence doing this also. And by the way, you can germinate seeds in Dixie cups. You don't have to do this fancy stuff, but the underground heating pad is good to have regardless of how you're germinating your seeds. It's good because it's going to speed up the process.
So you just have an electric foot warmer as an example.
Right, that's an option because I did some research on this, and people say that it's a sturdier heating mat than the one that's conventionally sold for sprouting seed. But this one is more durable, and that's why it's recommended.
And you can warm your feet. There you go.
You can warm your feet, right? Dual purpose.
Here we go. Vera, that was my next question. What do you actually use to propagate?
Yeah, so here's the mix. The mix that's recommended is 80% sphagnum peat moss, 10% vermiculite, 10% perlite, a wetting agent, which is just a chemical that makes the water stick better to the soil mix. And then if you're going to start potting up, then you put in slow release fertilizer. You can add that to the potting mix. But I also wanted to mention that what we saw in the previous slide, that can also be used for propagating cuttings. Okay, so it's dual purpose in that respect. And also the bottom heat is going to help the cuttings root and sprout shoots a lot faster.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah, so it's a really useful tool to have, regardless of how or what you're propagating.
I have a quick question for you. You mentioned peat moss here, 80% peat moss.
Right.
Can we speak on another episode of a substitute for peat moss?
Yeah, right. So there's a cocoa fiber that comes from coconut. The reason is that there's some diminution or using up peat moss resources. So people think it's more eco-friendly to use coconut fiber,
and
it serves the same purpose. Yeah.
Okay.
But the problem is that sometimes it's a little bit difficult to find.
In
most nurseries, you're not going to find it. You can probably get it online. It's a little more expensive, but it lasts longer than peat moss also.
Okay, good to know. Thanks. I just remembered that.
Right.
So sorry, carry on.
Okay. So yeah. And here's biodegradable containers. The advantage of these, of course, is especially the ones on the lower left-hand corner, and then the one second from the left. When you sprout something like this, you just put it in the ground, and then the container biodegrades, it disappears. So you don't have to actually transplant it. You just put the container in the ground, and the container disintegrates over time. Actually, the ones on the bottom left are called cow pots. They're made out of cow manure.
So you get your fertilization in your pot.
Yeah, right. So you're fertilizing too. Yeah, right. It's not just this paper pulp disintegrating, but you're actually getting cow manure into your garden.
And we can find these at our local.
Yeah, I don't know if you find a nursery, but if you look at cow pots, there's a whole website. Somebody invented this, a couple of guys, and it's just, I don't know, cowpots.com. I don't know, but if you search cow pots, you'll find it.
Okay, next up.
So here we come to sowing seeds in the ground. Some people still want to do that. That's fine. And the easiest way to do it is on the upper left, the easy tape. This is seeds that are glued to tape at the spacing that those seeds should have when they're planted. But you can make the tape yourself if you take 1-inch wide strips of a paper towel and Elmer's glue, and you just put a drop of Elmer's glue, again, at the correct spacing recommended for this particular vegetable or flower, and you put the seeds on those little drops of glue, and then you put it in your garden, you lay it down in your garden, and you cover it with a little bit of compost, and those seeds are going to grow. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. And then you also
the glue doesn't hurt the seeds. That's fascinating to
me. Yeah, because the plant, it grows out of the seed. It really leaves the seed behind, because what you see when you look at a seed is the seed coat. Okay, right. The embryo is what grows. A root grows down, and the shoots grow up. And then on the right, we have something called seed pellets. This is more and more common. I wouldn't be surprised if the day comes when all seeds will be pelleted, because it's a lot easier to grow that way. They pellet it with clay, and it's much easier to, especially small seeds like lettuce, which is pictured in the upper right. It makes it a lot easier to plant them at the correct spacing, one by one. And then you also have these devices that help you measure the distance between seeds that will the bottom left, you press this device down, and it has divots spaced an inch apart. Well, maybe your seeds are 2 inches apart. You just make sure that every 2 divots you're going to plant a seed. And then on the right, we also have like a ruler that, again, with a spacing and a dowel to make a hole. And finally, on the far right on the bottom, we have what's called a seeding square. If you're familiar with square foot gardening, so this will accommodate a number of different seeds with different spacings. For instance, corn, if I'm not mistaken, is the blue dots, right? You're only going to plant 4 corn plants in a square foot, okay, or maybe even less. And then on the outside, you see something with closer spacing, perhaps that's carrots and so on. But it makes the spacing. You just drop the seeds into the holes depending on the spacing.
And I can imagine it's quite a beautiful configuration when.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and again, you see that little dowel on the right, so you make a hole for the seed through the hole in the seeding square. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Onward.
So now
This is
we have
now
plants
you're
with
talking my
soil,
language.
which makes life a lot easier once they're in the ground. I mean, I should draw attention to the California poppy on the upper right, second from the upper right. I mean, I'm looking at my garden this morning and I see the seeds are sprouting. I didn't do anything. I mean, we had rain once, right?
Right.
And of course, there's a lot of mulch there, so the mulch holds the water in the soil. But these things just sprout. So once you have some, and really, you just have to throw the seeds out. If you throw the seeds out in your garden, they're probably going to sprout. I mean, it's a good idea to put a little compost over them. But as long as we get rain, this is their native environment, right? And they're going to do well. And we have 2 other natives. Bottom left, scarlet larkspur, and bottom right is a lupin. They're like, I don't know if it's lupin, lupine, whatever, but there are like 100 different varieties native to California, and so that's one that you should definitely keep in mind. And then we have these others. I like Love in the Mist, second from the left on the top. It's a beautiful plant, very delicate. Flowers come in different shades of blue, and highly recommend it.
I'm a fan of the nasturtiums because
nasturtium also. We mentioned the peas. These are very large seeds, so you want to soak them overnight. But once you get your nasturtium crop growing, they just keep coming.
And then you can eat them.
You can eat them. You can eat the flowers. You can eat the leaf. Also, Johnny Jump Up, you can eat the flowers. People garnish with Johnny Jump Up in the bottom, second from the right.
Of course, little pansy faces.
Yeah.
Great.
And then wildflower planting, this is a perfect time. You can still plant wildflowers. There's still going to be rain coming a little bit, at least we hope. And
again,
only thing you want to keep in mind, you don't have to enrich the soil. In fact, if you enrich the soil too much, it can be counterproductive because the seeds could rot from too much compost that would hold water and so on. But you might want to dig it up a little because California natives, the seeds are going to have pretty deep roots. They're going to want, I'm going to say deep, but they're going to want to go into the soil. And if you've spaded it up or rototilled it up, it's going to be a lot easier for them to put down roots. You're going to want to water like with a spray nozzle every day, okay, until they start coming up. But once they start coming up, they really don't need very much assistance. I should also mention, after you put the seeds down, you want to walk over them. You don't want to really cover them up, but you want to walk over them, okay, so that they make contact with the soil.
Erica LeBlanc in the chat has a fascinating little note. I don't know whether you see it or not. She says, California poppies are considered an invasive weed in Spain. It's like we abhor.
Really? That's fascinating. Yeah. Well, it's true. One man's weed is another man, or
funny.
One man's treasure is another man's torment. It's true. It's true. I mean, there are plants here that also have those tendencies,
Right.
and so yeah. You got to be aware of that. Yeah.
Thank you, Erica. That was a wonderful little point.
Right.
Okay, so you convinced me about I'm gonna be a wildflower fan no matter what. You've convinced me.
Yeah, it's easy, like again. I mean, the Theodore Payne Foundation has 120 different wildflower seeds. You can actually order, I think they'll send them to you in the mail, but you can go visit. It's in Sun Valley, which is northwest San Fernando Valley. Yeah, a lot of variety in California wildflower seeds.
We have a question from Jason Chan again. He says, I can root English ivy fine, but dries up indoors. Any suggestions on?
It dries up. Okay.
Yeah.
If he roots it, once it's rooted, I'm unsure why it would dry up. Maybe I think maybe what he's saying is maybe he has a harder time rooting it indoors. You got to be sure that. I'll tell you, one of the fastest way to root anything, I'm glad you asked this question, is if you cover. If you put an ivy shoot into the soil, what you do is you take a plastic bag, loosely wrap, and you put it around the container with the ivy. Some people use popsicle sticks to keep up the, so that the bag doesn't fall down on the plant. But if you water the soil and you put this plastic, or even a dome, like we said, if you take a plastic water bottle, right, like a small one, and you cut off the bottom and you put it on that way, or you cut off the top and you turn it over and you put it on. That's like a mini greenhouse, and it holds the moisture in, and that makes it a lot easier to root.
I love the MacGyvering you can do. Remember the show MacGyver, who could fix everything?
You had all these instant ways of doing things. Right.
I love that. Sorry, we're off topic. I wanted to get to
no problem, not a problem.
About,
I just want to bring people's attention to the difference between hybrid seeds and heirloom seeds. Hybrid seeds are seeds where we know the parents. Okay, so for instance, on the right, we have something called a Better Boy tomato. A Better Boy tomato, there are fields in the seed company real estate, right? And one field will have a parent A, and the other field will have parent B, okay? And what they will do is they will transfer pollen from parent A to the female flower parts on parent B. And they know that if they hybridize these two parents, the pollen from this parent and then the female from another parent, they're going to get predictable seeds. The problem with those seeds is, if I have a Better Boy tomato and I plant the seeds from that fruit, I'm going to get plants that resemble the parents where the fruit is not necessarily that interesting. Okay, I'm going to get a few fruit that are like the Better Boy, but most of them are going to be like the parents. Now, when you take an heirloom seed, it's a totally different story. Heirloom seeds are open pollinated, which means nobody is supervising which the pollen from which plant pollinates another plant, because they're all the same type. There's not A and B, but they're all A, right? They're all the same tomato, let's say. And the beauty of it is, now when I'm holding an heirloom tomato in my hand, they call it heirloom because these are varieties around 100 years old. They've just been passed down sort of from over the backyard fence, or maybe within a family or in a certain country. But the beauty is that I'm holding an heirloom tomato in my hand. If I plant a seed from that tomato, the plant that grows is going to have tomatoes exactly like that heirloom. So that's it. I'm not going to say exactly, right? Every seed is different, but that's going to be the preponderant type of fruit you're going to get.
And it's important to mention, I think heirlooms have the reputation of being extremely flavorful. I don't know whether that's true, but
it's not that the hybrids are not flavorful, but there's more variety of flavor. I think that's the key, and that's what people are looking for. You know, right. They want something very special.
Right.
So yeah, this is just, we're going to quickly pass over this. I give you here somebody asked how long do seeds live, and at the bottom I have the viability chart. But again, that's if you're freezing them. You know, if you're not freezing them, they're going to deteriorate much more quickly. I mean, you can keep them in in paper bags or just sealable bags, Tupperware, whatever. But it's better if you do to put in the freezer. And then there's something called a viability test, where you take out the seeds, you put 10 seeds, like we said, on a wet paper towel in a plastic bag. Depending on how many seeds sprout, you'll know how close, how many seeds to plant. Because if it says, for instance, plant every 2 inches, if let's say only 50% of the seeds germinate, so you're going to want to plant them at a density twice of what, if they recommend planting every 2 inches, you want to plant every 1 inch, because only 50% of the seeds are going to germinate. So that's something you want to keep in mind.
Good point.
Now we're getting to the cuttings. This was the gentleman's question about the ivy or anything else. The easiest way to do it, first of all, when you take the cutting, you want it to be, it can be 2 to 6 inches in length, and you cut off the top, because the top is most likely to wilt. So the very top shoot you remove, the very top leaves you remove. You can see, yeah, it tells you there. You cut here, you remove the leaves, and so on, and then you root that piece in fast draining soil. Here I give you examples: 9 parts perlite, 1 part peat moss. Roots just about everything, but other people, they use different combinations of or different proportions of perlite and peat moss, but those are the 2 ingredients. And some people substitute vermiculite for peat moss. But in any event, you can see here the 2 ways of creating a mini greenhouse. On the left, you cut off the top of a plastic container and put it over the cutting, and on the right, you cut off the bottom and put it over the cutting.
I want to point to that hormone treatment we skipped over.
I'm glad you brought that up. It's recommended that you dip the cutting in hormone. You can find rooting hormone in any nursery. It's a white powder, and you just dip the bottom of the cutting in it. The only thing you want to keep in mind, if you're going to put it in soil, you want to take like a pencil and make a hole with a pencil, and then put the cutting in. Because if you just stuck the cutting in, the rooting hormone would rub off as the stem is being inserted. So you want to make sure you make a hole, you put the cutting in, and then you firm up the soil around the cutting.
Okay, great.
And then hardwood cuttings, which you do this time of year. I mean, I should say the best time to do softwood cuttings is either in the spring or in the summer. Actually, any time of the growing season is good, but it's probably better in the spring or the end of the summer. But now when you come to hardwood cuttings, you can do that now. You can do that anytime. And what it is, not every tree does this, right? But certainly grapevines do this. Certainly fig trees do this. Certainly roses do this. Yeah, you take a stem cutting about 12 inches, and you want to make sure it's a hardened piece of the wood, right? No fresh growth, but it has to be hardened, maybe more towards the bottom of the stem. It's 12 inches. You bury 2/3 of it. 1/3 of it is exposed. Again, you can dip in root hormone, and many trees are going to sprout by the time fall comes around. Excuse me, by the time spring comes around, a lot of these cuttings will be rooted, and you'll be able to plant them in your garden.
Before we get off that, any notes about the soil?
You want it to be a good garden soil. You want it to be good draining, well draining. Yeah.
Well draining. Okay.
Okay. Now layering. Yeah. This is a way of. This is where you don't detach anything from the plant in the process of propagation. Simple layering on the left. You just take a branch, you bend it into the soil, you put some sort of a U-nail there to keep it there, and roots then are going to come out from where you dip that stem into the ground. And on the right, we have compound. In other words, you can take a stem and have it touch the ground go into the ground a couple different places. And once the roots form, you just cut, right? You just cut the shoot on the other side, and you have another plant. In the middle is something called mound or stool layering. If you have a tree or a woody plant, you want to propagate it, and it has shoots coming out. It's maybe 2 or 3 different stems, and you mound the soil around it, and then your roots are going to grow into the mound. So again, you can have additional shrubs or trees or whatever you like.
We've had a few questions come in, Joshua, from Ross Cole in particular. One, should root 1 be used on plants rooted in water? And also,
you can do it in water as well. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So yes, Ross. And then Ross also wanted to know, why do we need the greenhouse covers for plants in Southern California?
because even more so because it's very dry here.
Uh-huh.
You see, you don't want those leaves to dry out. That's the danger. And by putting this globe over it, the moisture is held there. Because what happens? The water that's on the soil, it rises, right? Water, and it condenses on the side of the container, and then it drips back down into the soil. So you just have this this cycle, this watering cycle, right? The evaporation and going up and coming down.
Great.
And
Thank
then
you.
last one, yeah. Now,
Oh, wait, we have a
I have
question.
another question. Go ahead.
We have a question on layering, and this might help you wrap it up too. Erica LeBlanc wants to know, will layering work with lavender?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, no
Right.
problem at all.
Anyway, but
And I just want to mention air layering. This is, let's say you have a tree and you really like that variety. You have I don't know, you have a Hass avocado and you want another Hass avocado. So what you do is you take the end of a branch and you take off, you can see air layering, you peel off the outside bark, right? And then you put peat moss over it, and then you take a plastic saran wrap or some other form of plastic, and you tie it off, and within a month or two, depending on the time of year, right? If it's a growing season, it's going to happen more quickly. You're going to see roots coming out into that peat moss, right? And you're going to see it visible through the saran or whatever. And then you just cut the bottom off, and you've got an avocado tree. So you saved a lot of time, right? Because if you take it from a fruiting tree, it means you're going to immediately start getting fruit from that tree that you created. And you can do this with tropical trees. It's very commonly done, but theoretically, you can do it with any tree.
anything. Interesting.
Yeah. And now tea budding, it's a kind of grafting, but it's something that, this is how fruit trees are created. You might be interested to know. How do we get a fruit? Because our fruit, like we get a Hass avocado tree, or we get an Alberta peach tree. What is that? Well, see on the left, it looks like a peach. Yeah, this is a peach. So he's taking a bud from a peach tree, right? After you take the bud off, it's a little piece of wood underneath it still, right? You take it off with the wood, you remove the wood, then you come up to the usually it's not necessarily going to be that woody, but it could be a seedling peach grown from a seed, or it could be a more developed plant. But if you want this particular variety, so you just make that slit and you open it up. So that's why they call it tea budding, because you made like a T cutting into the stem. You open it up, and then you take the bud and you put it down, and then you seal it off. This rope is actually kind of a passe way of doing it. More commonly now, you use parafilm, which is it's kind of a sticky tape to keep it from drying out before it can start to grow, and the oil rubber grafting strip serves the same purpose. But you have to get a special. I mean, there's a special tool. There's a special tool. You can see this guy's holding. You have the knife on the one end, and then this other kind of a blade that you open up with. So it's a special grafting tool that you have to get in order to do this. And of course, there's a ton of videos on YouTube that will give you more details.
Sure. I was just going to say, this seems like a somewhat advanced technique, not for the beginning gardener.
Yeah, probably not, but it's like anything else. If you put your mind to it, you'll be able to figure it out. Yeah.
What are the dangers of tea budding? Can you kill the plant?
No. I mean, because you're not going all the way around. If you were cutting all the way around, then there'd be a danger. But no, I don't see it.
Okay, great. Grafting.
So here's more grafting. Different types. You see on the left a splice graft. Some people think that's easier than having to stick that bud in, right? So you just take a branch of the variety you want, and this is how people get like two different peach varieties on the same tree, right? They take an Alberta peach, and then they take a Babcock peach, and they'll splice them into the existing peach tree. And then there's that whip and tongue graft is another way of doing it. On the right, you see you could have like a mature tree, let's say. I don't know, maybe the branches were diseased, maybe it's very old and they stop producing. And if you put in fresh new shoots into that persimmon tree, you could start fruiting all over again. Okay.
We have a question now regarding propagation of trees from Irene Rodriguez. She says, I have a grown magnolia tree. It has sprouted another tree. Now, how can I remove this new growth to a different area?
It's sprouting another tree. I'm trying to figure out what that means.
It might be.
Yeah. So if I'm thinking, if it has, I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure what, if she says it's sprouting another tree. I mean, I've seen some, I've seen fig trees take root in other trees. You know, like you suddenly look up, like a sycamore. Yeah, I mean, because they're very, they're very, what should I say? They're very opportunistic. Okay, so sometimes, I mean, if you see that, then you just kind of want to carefully cut it out. I mean, you don't want to damage the tree that it's growing in, but yeah, I think that
grafting principles, or rather, I'm sorry, plant propagation principles that we've talked about earlier, by cutting out the.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it would be possible, but I'd be very cautious about it. In other words, if I saw a fig tree growing in my magnolia tree, I might just want to remove the fig, just cut it out and not try to propagate it. You understand what I'm saying? Because you could damage the magnolia.
Sacrifice the fig for the magnolia. Do it.
Okay, so here we come to succulents, which a lot of people get into succulents because the idea, I have a succulent plant, but I'm going to have hundreds of more, right? And probably the two most common succulents that people grow in their gardens are on the left, the hens and chicks, which grow from stolons, which are like they're shoots that grow along the surface of the ground. Actually, strawberries grow with stolons, so you can identify. It's any stem that grows along the surface, but also produces new plants. And then on the right, we have Echeveria, which is also the same thing. That same principle. They clump. They grow in clumps, but those clumps are all on stolons. And the thing about it, how do you propagate it? Well, you cut. Right, you cut that plant from that stolon, and you can dip it in root hormone as well. The one thing you want to do, though, when you're talking about succulents, you want to let the cut heal for a few days. It's very important. After the cut is healed, then you can plant it. If you plant it without the cut healing, the plant might not grow, unless it already has roots on it. Sometimes these offsets that are growing on the soil, if they actually have roots, then you can plant it right away. But sometimes you just see the top with no roots, so you have to wait for it to callus off, it's called, where the cut heals, and that can take a few days. I'd wait a week, and then you can plant it.
Okay.
And in the middle we have agave, which also grows from rhizomatous. So that's from rhizome. The difference between a stolon is a stem that grows on the surface of the soil. A rhizome grows just beneath the soil. The surface, and that's what you have in agaves, and so that's how you propagate them as well.
I've had the best luck propagating aloe. Just stick it in water and watch it go.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, so there you go. So you are successful, Samantha.
Oh, there we go. Something finally.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I mean, I just wanted to show, if you can see this. I don't know if you can see the roots.
Yeah, I can see the green roots.
Yeah, actually, the green are shoots. This is willow. I took a willow. Actually, there's a Jewish holiday called Sukkot, where we shake a palm branch and a few other species. So this is the willow that we use in that ceremony. And what I did was I put these in the water, and you see they sprouted roots. So, and it's interesting because even the shoots are growing out of it underwater. So. Yeah. That's the great thing about propagation too, and you never know what you're going to get, and it's such a learning experience, and it's such a wonderful world of discovery.
I love that. Well, before we wrap up, and we're almost at the end of time, Erica LeBlanc has a question going back to that layering, the air layering.
Right.
She says, by the way, the session is the best. So kudos to you, Joshua. She wants to know if I air layer a citrus branch of a plant that was a desired variety, but growing on a non-desired rootstock and cut it off, will I get the rootstock version? Or
No, no, not at all. Not at all. You're just going to get the where you did the air layering. Absolutely.
Great. There you go, Erica.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
So here, propagation in water. So yeah, I did the show and tell, but now you can see so many plants can be rooted in water. So many, as long as the stem is not really hard, okay, there's a softness to it, you've got a good chance of rooting it. I mean, basil is classic, okay? Take a basil shoot and stick it in water, I guarantee it's going to grow. But here on the left, you have a number of shoots from indoor plants. The vast majority of indoor plants are going to root if you take a stem and you stick it in water. Just about all of them. Okay. And on the bottom, we have this bulbs. I took the hyacinth and the paper white narcissus because they're very fragrant, and you can do that now. You can take those bulbs. The difference is hyacinth, you have to chill. You have to chill for probably 6 weeks at least, and then you can root them in water. But the beauty of the paper white is they don't require any chilling, so you can immediately take your paper white, which is it's a type of daffodil narcissus, right, and put it in water. Put it in a jar, or actually you can grow these in soil as well, but and they're gonna flower, they're gonna fill the room with fragrance. And then of course we have the avocado on the right, which is, they have a special container now for,
I was gonna say, I love that.
Yeah, it's very cute. Yeah.
I hate to say it, but we're almost at the end.
I know. Right. So I just wanted, it's the poinsettia time of year, and so I wanted to bring to you how to propagate a poinsettia. I don't know, do we have? So if you want to do it from cuttings, you take cuttings from February or March when the bracts are they look like leaves, but they're the colorful parts of the plant, and you dip them in root hormone. You put them in a mix of half sand, half perlite, and again the plastic bag treatment, right, to keep the humidity in, and they're going to root. Or you can even do it later if you want. You can do it in the spring or the summer. If you want to do the seeds, you're going to have to propagate yourself. You get just a very fine artist brush, a very small one. And you see the red here with the yellow on the top. The yellow, those red threads with the yellow, those are anthers, and the yellow is the pollen. And you brush that pollen over those kind of yellow-green female flower parts. And then they're going to expand, and you're going to get these little green pods filled with seeds. You put them in a brown paper bag, and they turn brown, and then the seeds fall into the bag, and then you can
change your prester. Okay, I will report back. We have a lot of resources. We are at the end of our time. I cannot believe how much material we've covered. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thank you.
And just to remind you folks, Joshua's column runs in Saturday's paper and online in all of our publications. His website is thesmartergardener.com. Meanwhile, please know that you're going to get these slides again, so don't worry, you're going to have this material to refer to. Meanwhile, you can catch up on the virtual programs, anything you've missed, by going to scng.com/virtual events. And if you'd like to share your thoughts from today, or if you have additional questions, please email us at events@scng.com. And don't forget, we've got our bookish session coming up December 16th. If you like books, come join us for that conversation. And I just want to say, again, if you're not a subscriber but want to get in on all the entertainment and information we offer, give us a call at 877-469-6133. Thanks again for your support, everybody. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Julie Corlett,
Julie Corlett. Yay, Julie.
She does so much work. Yay, Julie. She's our production manager. Thanks, and we hope to see you next time, folks. Take care. Bye.